Welcome to every single book that I read in January, described without spoilers, so you can figure out if it's something you want to read in the future. Let's start with the first book that I read, The Love Hypothesis. I read this book at the start of this month, and it was because I randomly got insomnia, and it was just bad. It was really uncomfortable, and so I needed to read something that was like not super stimulating, that I knew wasn't gonna stress me out, and so I went with The Love Hypothesis because it's just that kind of book for me. At this point, The Love Hypothesis is like on the same level as Twilight for me. Like, it just has a special place in my heart, and objectively, it is not a perfect book, but to me, it is perfect. This story is about Olive, and she's a grad student, and she's trying to convince her friend that she is moving on from her ex-boyfriend so that her friend can date her ex-boyfriend. And so one night she lies to her friend and she says, I've got a date, like you should go out with my ex-boyfriend, have some fun, and I'm gonna be on a date of my own. And her friend is like, okay, all right, fine. And then blah, blah, blah. Olive ends up going to the lab because she doesn't really have a date. She's in the lab and she sees her friend there, and her friend's not supposed to be there. And she's like, oh shoot, my friend is going to realize that I'm not actually on a date. And so she runs up to the first man she can find and then kisses him, and he is Dr. Adam Carlson of the biology department. Need I say anything else? This is based on Raylo. It is Raylo fan fiction in the biology form, and it's just glorious. So many of the situations are just ridiculous. Like, it is genuinely just a fun time, and it's very cute, and the tension. I will devour pretty much anything that Ali Hazelwood writes at this point. I love her. So overall, I did give this book 5 books, but it's like one of my all-time favorites. Like I said, it's like Twilight. You might not like this book if you don't like overly quirky writing. Honestly, some of this writing like reeks of the millennial trying to be like hip and in, you know what I'm saying? Okay, so if you can't take the quirkiness and you find that annoying, you probably won't like this. The next book that I read in January was Phantasma by Kaylie Smith. And this is one that's on Kindle Unlimited if you're interested in reading it yourself. I was just all over the fun little romances this month. This one is much less whimsical though. This one, it had some darker themes, it had some violence. This book is about a necromancer, and she finds herself in a contest that is incredibly deadly, run by demons, and her sister is there, and she's trying to find her sister and get her sister out of danger. These contests, it's not like, oh, you have to be really skilled to get through. It's like, no, they're set up to kill you. Like, you are either lucky or receiving help if you're surviving these trials. So she ends up making an alliance with Blackwell, who is a supernatural entity in the mansion, and he also happens to be really hot and attracted to her. And so that's how the story goes forward. It has a lot of spice. This is probably one of the most spice-oriented books I've ever read. Like, it just has a lot of scenes, and it's nothing crazy. There's one scene that's like a little bit edgy, I guess, but like, But I would just say that they're not really that skippable of scenes, and so if you're not looking for something spicy, this is probably not for you, but it is really fun. The trials are so intense and exciting, and I love the atmosphere in this novel as well. You're in a gothic mansion. With that being said, it's not like amazing literature by any means. In my Goodreads, I think because of the fun that I had, I gave this like 4 stars, but if I'm really being fair, it's a 3.5 star read, and it's just good. It's fun. Do I have any desire to read the sequel? Maybe, if it's convenient for me, but I'm not like on the edge of my seat at all. Honestly, this could be a standalone book. One thing that was kind of ruined for me in this book was the description of Blackwell, because they were describing him and I was like, oh, he's blonde? And then I was like, okay, I can work with this. It's okay. We love Rowan Whitethorn. Everybody says he has white hair. No, it's platinum blonde, okay? It's white, but it's platinum blonde. Fight me? Blonde. Anyway, I like some blondes. They're not all that bad. I just prefer a shadow daddy, you know? So I read that, and they go on to describe him in like kind of regal apparel, and I was like, oh, Vladimir from Twilight. Pain. That just kind of killed it for me. Like, I stopped. You can't do that to me. This book is for the people who want to read romances with blondes. I know you're out there. I'm not one of you, but that's okay. The third book that I read in January was yet another TikTok romantasy, a viral TikTok book, and this one was fun. It started off really strong because vampires. As I said, Twilight, one of my favorite series. I love a vampire story, especially with a little bit of a romance. I love Alucard from Castlevania. Like, please, vampires, I'll take it. That's all I was reading, and it was fun. I was really liking it, but then the plotting just kind of became bleh toward the end, and I was like, oh, that's fine. So this book is about a human girl, and she was like kind of adopted by the king of the vampires, or like a king of some vampires. Anyway, she ends up in this death contest, another death contest, which is really fun for me. I love reading those. And she's in the death contest with a bunch of vampires, severely outmatched, literally comes so close to death on so many occasions. And in the contest, she meets Rain. That's pretty much what this book is. It's just a death contest, and then stuff happens, and the end has a lot of twists, and I just wasn't a huge fan. I have no desire to continue reading the series. It was fun, but it was a one-off for me. I don't want to read it anymore. So overall, I gave this book 3 stars, and I feel like that's pretty fair. Again, very fun if you just want to read something that is exciting, has a good little romance, has vampires. Could be great for you, but I just found it lacking in some areas. Also, this book has one spicy scene, so if that's something you're worried about, this is more focused on like the action side of the story. It's like slow burn, and I actually feel like the slow burn was taken too far. Like, I feel like there was a specific point where it should have ended, and then the author just took it even further, and I was like, okay, you had me on the edge of my seat, and then I fell off of my seat and you didn't catch me, and I couldn't get back on the seat. After that, I was kind of like, oh, I need to read something that is of consequence. I need to read something that isn't a silly little TikTok romantasy. So then I moved on to Onyx Storm, which is a TikTok romantasy, but I had to read Onyx Storm. I was so excited because I was not planning to have access to it on the first day. I wanted to get a physical copy, but I don't live near a bookstore. But I put a hold on it on Libby for the audiobook, and then I got the audiobook on day 1. I don't know how that happened, but I was really excited about it. So I listened to this book. It took me a couple days, and I may have an unpopular opinion here, but I think that this book was the best one in the series by far. I loved Fourth Wing. It was like so good. Again, on the level of Twilight and The Love Hypothesis. Like, objectively flawed, but in my heart and my soul, forever changed. I read Iron Flame, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to keep reading this series. That's kind of dog water. I gave Onyx Storm a shot, and I'm so happy because I feel like Rebecca Yarros, she took a series that was kind of like a C-tier fantasy series, and she expanded the world. I feel like some of her writing for like battle scenes improved. Like, I have never read dragon writing like that before. It was so insane. And long story short, I think she took this series that was not that great and she turned it into like a B-tier series. Like, she made it even better. And a lot of people didn't like what she did with the world expansion and all of the different characters, but I just think that it was genius and I really liked it. And I especially liked Onyx Storm because for some reason when I was reading it, I was getting nostalgia for Divergent. This is just so fun. So I really liked it. Xaden, the words that come out of his mouth. Xaden is one of my favorite book boyfriends of all time from this day forward. I wasn't that into him. I read Onyx Storm. Sold. I love him. And I'm very excited to see what happens with all of those cliffhangers in the 4th book. Great that we get to wait however long. Rebecca Yarros said she's not gonna like put out a date, and she might even write something before she writes the next book. Anyway, I really liked the book and I gave it 4.5 stars. The last book that I read in January took the cake. It was so insanely good. I saw this getting hyped up on the internet and I thought, all right, I'm not gonna get my hopes up too high because I know how that goes. I think even if I had high hopes going into this book, I would have still been impressed. I read The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Let me show you my copy. Do you see this? I tabbed the crap out of this book. It is... I don't know if you realize I could make an entire video devoted to this book for 30 minutes, for an hour. I don't think you understand how much I love this book. It is currently my favorite book of all time. Like, nothing compares to this book. It is so incredible the way that R.F. Kuang tells such a beautiful, incredible story while also covering really important societal and cultural issues. Like, it's a masterpiece. It's like difficult to even describe what this book is about because it genuinely feels like you're living a lifetime with this character. Even though this book only takes place over like 3 years, it feels like you're just going through so much life, so many stages of life with Rin, and it's insane. But this book is about Rin. She is going to be married off to this old man, and she's like ew, no thank you. She studies so insanely hard and she gets top scores on this really ridiculously difficult exam. Like so difficult that when you go in, they check your holes to make sure you don't have cheating materials in the holes. Anyway, she aces the exam and she gets into this prestigious war college where the tuition is paid. That's why she goes there. She goes on a journey, okay? There's war, there's enlightenment. It's just insane. If you're gonna read any of the books in this video, like I get it if you want to have a fun time, obviously. I read like 4 fun time little books this month, but this book, please read it. If you couldn't guess, I gave that book 6 out of 5 stars. It is currently sitting at my favorite book of all time. That is the position that it is occupying. Nothing I've read compares to that. I've read R. F. Kuang before. I read Babel, I read Yellowface, and I was like, these are good books. I liked Babel more than Yellowface, but they weren't insane to me, and now I get it. I get it now. I'm really excited to read Catabasis, I don't know how you say it, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just really excited because me and R.F. Kuang, we're about to be like this. I want to read everything that she writes. I will say you may not like this book if you're someone who's really sensitive to dark things, because something that this book does, it kind of reminds you of Divergent at first. Like you've got this war college thing going on, but then war happens and this book turns into a raw, real, dark experience of human morality, and it's disturbing. There are some very triggering things that happen in the latter half of this book. So just be aware going in, look up the trigger warnings. I assume if you're someone who gets triggered when you're reading, you do this all the time, but specifically for this book, please do yourself a favor and just give it a little check. Oh, also, this is one that's on Kindle Unlimited. I started reading it on Kindle Unlimited and I was like, no, I have to have a physical copy, so I ordered it, and then I read the second half on paperback and I added my tabs. And that is everything that I read in January. It was an okay reading month. I think that it was great considering the health issues that I was having at the beginning, and I'm very excited to continue reading into February. I appreciate you being here. Let me know how you felt about these books if you read them or if you plan to read them now that you've seen this video, and I will see you next time.